Some of my favorite things to look at surrounding a game or movie's development has always been concept art. In case you don't know, concept art is a form of visual development used in entertainment like film, video games, and animation to visualize ideas like characters and settings before production begins. You can think of concept art as a sort of blueprint for an idea before it gets fully implemented. A really great example for how concept art develops a project would be the concept art for Darth Vader. In George Lucas's first drafts, Darth Vader was a much less important character, by the second draft only having around 2 scenes and having these small pieces of art done for him. But then, as the character got further developed, testing out a more evil, menacing look to the character as seen in this concept art, George Lucas was so impressed with the new designs that he made him into a more prominent character. And now, he's one of the most recognized and popular villains, and just characters in general, of all time, notably for his perfect design. Seeing these early precursors of fully implemented ideas that you've already experienced gives really interesting insight into how ideas and thoughts are developed into complete experiences. So, in this video, I want to go through a goodie bag of interesting concept art I found, and I don't think there's any better place to start than If you know anything about the Half-Life 2 leak, then you probably know how much the game changed over its development cycle, and how much darker and grittier it originally was.
So in Half-Life 1, you open this portal, some strange rift. Well, what if that broadcasts this signal to the universe that's like, there's this planet there, it's free air and water. Well, there's this mega organization that's resource starved, and they're just gonna come and take it.
There was a lot of early testing of the mega organization that became the Combine, with all sorts of different alien designs. There was some early art for an alien assassin, an early Combine soldier design that looks like a slug. At some point, someone designed this that was supposed to be an early helmet concept. Thank God they didn't land on this. But eventually they landed on a more human-shaped soldier with a gas mask sort of helmet. But they went through many different designs for the Combine, and a common theme was having the designs be ambiguous to being man-made or natural. But for Half-Life 2, the environment art has got to be some of the coolest to look at of any project. It goes for this brutalist, inhuman, and polluted feel. It's the perfect atmosphere of a dystopia. There's a ton of art for the Citadel as well. They knew this was going to be one of their best locations, not only as a level, but as a reflection of the Combine, really emphasizing how the Combine present their power over the human race. A ton was cut from the final project. Half-Life 2 still gives a lot of the feeling from this art, but just not as insanely overdone or obvious. There was a cut air exchange level, which is where all the pollution came from in the concept art, cut train depot level, a wasteland level, a whole sequence where a plane was to crash into a high-rise, which had to be cut after 9/11. They planned 4 entire cities for the game, but it just ended up being too ambitious. And the very early concept art, where the game was just literally very dark, had to be lightened up later on, as the team didn't think players would enjoy spending the entire game in such an oppressive setting. But eventually, the team landed on a still oppressive and clearly overthrown world, but found a middle ground to make it not feel so disheartening. Bioshock is another game with really cool environment art. Ken Levine, the creator of Bioshock, wanted to make a spiritual successor to his own System Shock 2, and wanted another game that emphasized a feeling of being isolated from the outside world, like in the spaceship from that game. In early testing, they tried an underwater environment with a couple windows spattered around, but it still felt like a spaceship as it wasn't obvious that you were underwater. The environment was all very bland. So they decided that the environment was going to remind you that you were underwater at all times. Rooms were to have massive windows, revealing the ocean floor with seaweed, fish, and other underwater buildings in the distance. And this isolation under the sea is what led to the story being developed to what it is. The question of what idealistic person would try to create a utopia away from the world is what led to the creation of Andrew Ryan. Another idea the team initially struggled with were the Big Daddies and Little Sisters. The team had an idea for a protector enemy and vulnerable harvester duo, and while they had a pretty good idea early on for the Big Daddies, being just these tanks wearing diving suits, they weren't immediately sure on what the harvesters should be. They tried a sea slug, which in the lore is where the atom comes from in the game, a frog with a jar on its back, this little dog man that's, well, honestly pretty cute, some alien looking things, and a dog in a wheelchair because that makes sense. But they wanted the harvester to be endearing, something that you would intrinsically save versus harvest just because it's the right thing to do, and none of these designs really did that. Except maybe the dog man, but I don't know why there's like this little dog. So eventually they tried out a little girl. In the initial designs, the girl looked far more ghoulish and morbid, but after designing them to be far more human and sympathetic, it made the players hesitate to harvest them, and the majority didn't, even though the reward for harvesting them is bigger, and that's how we ended up with the Little Sisters. You know how Nintendo loves doing arts and crafts art styles? You know, like Kirby's Epic Yarn, Yoshi's Woolly World, Paper Mario? Well, check out this concept art for Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Odyssey. I saw this and thought that a 2D Mario game in the style of blueprints or sketches would be awesome, but anyway, it's too bad Nintendo keeps their cards so close to their chest and doesn't reveal much surrounding development, because what has been leaked or limitedly shown is often amazing. Like all this concept art for the water levels in Mario Galaxy, this art of the Sand Kingdom from Odyssey, all these sick alien and environment designs from Metroid Prime, or these weirdly lucid feeling 3D renders from Mario 64. These images give me like a weirdly nostalgic feel, even though I was born a decade after this game came out. But the most interesting concept art to me from Nintendo has to be the original Splatoon. The origins of Splatoon can be traced back to this tech demo for the Wii U. The demo was quite crude, but it showcased a brand new kind of shooter, and the team that made it was confident that it was the backbone for a new IP, and they wanted to prove it to the higher-ups at Nintendo through the game's vibe and, more importantly, character design. The team got to work with some character ideas, and the main goal was trying to have the swim and paint mechanic make sense to the characters. An early sketch had some ideas for humans with capes that they would flip over their head to hide, and then someone took that idea and swapped that with a t-shirt. Oh, and also gave them bunny ears. So the dev team tried bunnies, and weirdly the bunnies are actually what stuck through most of development, as not only were they programmed into the game, but a lot of different concept art was made for them. Like this one of the general characters, this one showing the bunnies and what would become Urchin Underpass, and most interesting of them all, a concept art for what became the Splatfests that made it into the final game, but with the bunnies instead of the Inklings. And it seems that the team brought over a lot of the same ideas from the bunnies to the Inklings, as they share a lot of DNA and vibe. But both the dev team and Nintendo always had the underlying question of, why are bunnies shooting paint? They knew it didn't make a lot of sense. And so, going back to the drawing board, they tried many more ideas, as was shown in this slide here. But at some point, after looking back at a previous idea for the characters being squids, and having the idea that they shot ink instead of paint, everything clicked, and they combined them with the humans from earlier to create the Inklings. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has, unsurprisingly, some of the most beautiful concept art. I mean, just look at these illustrations. These are just straight up gorgeous. This doesn't even feel like concept art. It feels like a painting. It's amazing. The characters' designs is something that went through a lot of iterating though. Miles, when he debuted in the comics, was 13 years old, and the original concept art for Spider-Verse seems to depict him as 13, as well he looks far younger than he does in the final product. But they ended up aging him to 14 for the movie and making him look far older than he did. And they also aged him up again to 15 for Across the Spider-Verse. They had some cool art for Spider-Gwen that evolved pretty rapidly into what she looks like in the final movie. Kingpin had some hilarious original designs that look even funnier than he does in the final movie. I always thought that Green Goblin was kind of strange in the original movie. In the final film, he's one of Kingpin's goons and looks far more like the Lizard than the Green Goblin. And there were a couple of different designs for him in the original concept art. Some of them look very, very cool, and some of them just look outright dopey. Crowler was designed to have way more green than purple. It also seems like Miles' roommate was going to be a bigger character. There's a lot of art done for him, even though in the final product, he's kind of an afterthought. But like, man, Spider-Verse has some of the most beautiful art of any project out there. I'm just going to slide through a couple here. While looking for Evangelion concept art, I found the original proposal that has some cool information and art for the original pitch. Like how the angels were originally going to be called apostles, and how they, no joke, listed grade school students as one of the target demographics for the show. I mean, sure, what's a childhood without a little trauma? But it also had some early art for the characters, angels, and Evas. Some early renditions of Shinji, Asuka, Rei, and more. The one of Shinji isn't really true to the show though, as it seems that he's actually happy in this art. The Misato one has her in an army jumpsuit with an SMG. That's pretty tough. Asuka looks kinda different, but still angry. Rei looks pretty similar, same thing with Gendo. Most of the angels look wildly different than in the final show though, so Hakuil looks much different and honestly cooler than the final version. Satchel's design was just entirely different and was going to be the original angel that attacked Asuka in the water. Ariel on the top of the page looks pretty much the same as in the final version, but the two on the bottom here, Turiel and Shatail, were cut from the final show. Shatail seems to be cut for either being too similar to Ramiel or being what became of Ramiel. And Turiel, which was a floating monolith that would self-destruct, might have been cut for the same reason, being too similar to Sahaquil. They have art for the Unit 1's armor breaking off that looks sick as hell. They have art for both Unit 0 and Unit 2, and a ton more interesting stuff in the proposal. If you want to read it, some people at the Evangelion wiki were kind enough to translate most of the pages. There is so much cool concept art out there. Covering all of it would be impossible. I would like to look at some more concept art though, and maybe make another video on it. If any of you guys know of any cool projects with some concept art, leave it in the comments. I'll try to read and respond to all of them, and I might feature it in a new video. But for now, I think I've gotten my fill of concept art for the day. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.